Hi, I'm Phil Constantine, and on today's Travels with Phil, we're going to Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia. This is just south of the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., and is the nation's premier military cemetery. Now, there's approximately 400,000 graves out here, and it covers about 624 acres, although it has been expanded a couple of times, and there's even the possibility that it may be expanded in the future. There are lots and lots of famous people buried out here, as well as just regular old military folks, and even some famous folks that were just privates, as it were, in the military. That allowed you the opportunity to be buried here or at any of the military bases somewhere in the United States, although they are almost full here at the present time. Right here, this section has a whole lot of U.S. Supreme Court judges: John Philip Stevens, Douglas. This is not a judge. But back over here, we have just more and more William O. Douglas. There are lots of Supreme Courts. They have a tendency to put people in similar areas. It doesn't have to be that way necessarily, but it is often grouped together for certain reasons. And in this particular case, there are some mixed in, some other folks mixed in amongst the Supreme Court justices, including Admiral Rickover, the father of the nuclear navy, Potter Stewart, another judge. And as we look around, this is a very large place. Thurgood Marshall, John Paul Stevens again, and Andrew Blackman. That's Arlington House up at the top. I'll tell you more about that in just a bit. John Fitzgerald Kennedy was the United States President, one of only two buried here. The other is William Howard Taft. And this is a video of the wreath-laying ceremony that they do on a regular basis here. The bagpipes you hear in the background are just some background music. That is not music coming from this particular ceremony. But it's a very solemn occasion. They do things very, very seriously out here, as you notice by the sign at the very beginning: silence and respect, because this is a cemetery. Lots of tourists come out, but still a cemetery nonetheless. And John Kennedy is buried in a fairly sparsely populated area. In fact, it's just him and his two brothers. I'll show you some pictures of that in just a minute. Very specific military customs, traditions, procedures are followed here. They take a great deal of pride in their presentation. I'll tell you a little bit more about a full honors funeral at the end of this video. Let's go over and look at some video I shot over at the grave.
Travels with Phil continues from Arlington Cemetery. This is the gravesite for John Kennedy. And also Jacqueline's born here, and a couple of children as well. Turn off lane here. Bobby Kennedy's off to one side with a very, very simple marker. He actually didn't want to be buried here, but they did it anyway. Arlington Cemetery in Virginia. Travels with Phil continues. This is Ted Kennedy. It says Edward Moore Kennedy. This is his grave. Very simple marker. Right below the Lee House. Over here, that's Bobby Kennedy. Then just the other side of the shrubs over there is where John Fitzgerald Kennedy. So all three brothers right here in a row. Very prestigious spot. Arlington Cemetery.
And used to be they allowed people to have bigger headstones. Now they all have to be the same size pretty much.
Travels with Phil continues here at the Arlington Cemetery. This is the Coast Guard Memorial. As the tour guide was saying, a lot of people don't think about the Coast Guard getting in the line of fire very often, but as an example, in World War II, they were the ones who were driving the landing boats at many of the World War II landings, including Omaha and Utah. And then right over here, this is Matthew Alexander Henson, co-discoverer of the North Pole, and his other co-discoverer of the North Pole, Robert Edwin Perry.
They knew where it was. They were just the first to reach it.
The star up there indicates where the North Pole is. Then off here behind them, this is the Air Force Memorial. And it has what they call the missing man, the missing flyer, symbolically displayed there. That's a very, very large building. That's Washington across the way. And that's for the missing person. Whenever a pilot dies, they do a memorial fly by, and whatever position that pilot held, that's the person that pulls out. And then just a little bit over here to your left, I'll zoom in on this, pardon the shakiness, is the Pentagon.
Through the trees.
As the tour guide said, the head shed. Arlington Cemetery.
A couple of Medal of Honor recipients here. Aren't a lot of them there, but then again, there aren't a lot of them, period. All right, this is a memorial for the First World War. And
still at Arlington, this is a memorial for World War I, not a really official one. It says 116,516 people who died in World War I. This is a Bruce, and beside it is the grave for General Pershing, a general of the Army in World War I. One of the stories, very few stories about my father's father, Morris Constantine, Sr., I guess, is that he was an interpreter for Pershing during World War I. Sometime he went by the nickname Blackjack. You can look up yourself why they would call him Blackjack.
one of only 2 6-star generals.
But he was general of the armies during World War I.
And this is the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? I am Staff Sergeant Mesa of the 3rd Infantry Regiment, United States Army. Guard of Honor, Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. The ceremony that you are about to witness is the changing of the guard. In keeping with the dignity of this ceremony, it is requested that everyone remain silent and standing. Thank you.
He's inspecting the weapon of the soldier that's about to come on duty. Former military man was standing right behind me, and toward the end of this, he almost gasped out loud. I mean, you could tell he was very startled, and you hear a ching kind of sound where something falls on the ground toward the very end of this, and the guy behind me says he just failed his inspection. And evidently that's why he doesn't just turn around and walk off with him back toward to relieve the other guard. He says this almost never happens. You can watch when he wipes his glove over something to see if it's dirty. It takes him a while to even turn and look at his glove. Everything is deliberate movement. There was that sound. Something fell. just taking that guy's word for it, but it did seem like it took an awful long time. And in fact, I don't even show all of it here because it is such a long ceremony. Then back out to the rest of the cemetery. The 385th Bomber Group. This is Battle of the Bulge Memorial. Audie Murphy, 28 medals before he was 21 in World War II, the most decorated soldier in World War II. This is for some astronauts. This is for the USS Maine, which blew up in Havana, Cuba, started the Spanish-American War, or one of the first events of the Spanish-American War. The big auditorium. It's where the presidents usually come out and speak. A lot of special monuments to different groups, events, battles. Abner Doubleday from baseball and Gettysburg. And then Arlington House. Now, Arlington House was owned by the wife of Robert E. Lee. That's the one I was talking about earlier, Mary Ann Custis Lee. And basically they lost the property because of his activity in the Civil War fighting for the South. They needed a large place to bury people.
Continuing on from Arlington Cemetery, in case you didn't know, Washington was designed by Pierre-Charles Lafont. And speaking of him, in Washington, there it is. This is Arlington House.
That's his site right there in front of him.
It was owned by George Washington's wife. Eventually came into the hands of Robert E. Lee. See what happens when you lose the war? They take your property and make a cemetery out of it.
She was the great-granddaughter of Martha Washington.
That's the Potomac, or the Potomac. There, the center, Jefferson Monument.
The white rounded building.
Capitol in the center now.
Spike on top.
Washington Monument. The road leads directly to Lincoln Memorial, Washington, D.C. And I believe right in front of you there is where the Iwo Jima Memorial is. From Arlington House, high atop Arlington National Cemetery, Washington, D.C., and Virginia and Arlington in the foreground. Bring that again. Lincoln, Washington, Capitol, Jefferson.
First burial took place here May 13th, 1864, and they're pretty much full now. Ord, Anson Mills, an Indian Wars fighter, Mork. Then George Crook, fought in the Civil War, and it was an Indian fighter.
Continuing from Arlington Cemetery, this is George Crook. See here is a service record in the War of the Rebellion. Some people might call that the Civil War. War between the states. George Crook, a little hard to read. Major General, United States Army, born Dayton, Ohio, September 1830. Died Chicago, March 1890. Society of the Army of West Virginia is what it says there. The other side, it talks about the Indian Wars. The Indian campaigns, 52, Rogue River, Pitt River, Shastas, Muscobs, Modocs, Paiutes, Bannock, Shoshone, Apache, Sioux, Cheyenne, Utes, Nez Perce, Apaches, Poncas, and Sioux again. Definitely had a lot of dealings with American Indians. And this is the bas relief of the surrender of Geronimo to General Crook in the Sierra Madre Mountains in Mexico, 1883.
Geronimo's on the left.
Geronimo's in there.
The only tribe he didn't fight was mine, the Cherokee.
See them all. Mork? Okay, from Arlington Cemetery.
John Gibson, This is not the actor. I once thought it was the actor, but it isn't. He was also a general. Sheridan. There's lots of people that are interesting out there that you could see. And then we have another spot coming up, the Tomb of Remembrance. This is for only partial remains that are found and are cremated. Christmas time, they put wreaths on most of the headstones, if not all. They also put flags in. This is a ceremony or called a flags in. And quite often for, they used to call it Decoration Day, Memorial Day. They'll do it for certain time periods. And the soldiers will go out and put a flag on every single headstone. And you'll see them out here sort of standing in front of it in an awkward position just because they're measuring the distance away from the headstone with their boot.
Memorial Day is the time that we remember service members and we remember their sacrifice. Most of the flags that are placed here at Arlington are placed by the 3rd Infantry Regiment. It's something that they have historically done here, but the 3rd Infantry Regiment allows the chaplains here in the area to place the flags here on Chaplain's Hill, since this is such a special place to the Chaplain Corps. And so we take this opportunity to honor our fellow chaplains who have gone on before us, and we remember that our freedom is not free, and that the things that we enjoy as Americans are sometimes paid at a cost, a high cost. And so we remember that.
Now this is an actual ceremony. This is the way the Marine Corps does their flag folding ceremony. Army does it pretty much the same, but slightly different. And again, all the movements are very deliberate and very precise. And I mentioned earlier they have a thing called the Full Honors Funeral. It comes with a military band. You don't have to have one of these, but you can. Also included are an escort platoon, which is what you see now. Then a color guard. They call the soldiers that are normally stationed here the Old Guard. They also have a caisson. You heard the song, the caissons go rolling along. Well, that was used to transport ammunition, but it became a tradition to transport caskets. Another part of it is a firing party. You notice the puff of smoke doesn't quite go with the sound? Well, that's an actual demonstration of physics. This was taken from some distance away with a zoom lens. This has been Arlington National Cemetery, just south of Washington, D.C. And if you don't get a chance to go there, hopefully you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up by clicking on the button below. You're welcome to leave comments below as long as the language is family friendly. And finally, if you'd like to see more of my videos, please subscribe to my channel by clicking the button over on the bottom right-hand corner. Thank you again for watching.